Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna let you move it on. I'll let you be in charge. Yeah, what?
I'm not worthy anymore. That's awesome.
How's that? Somebody, I didn't put turn those on,
There.
and I didn't even look. Okay.
Feels dark and gloomy. I want it light when I'm spending the taxpayers' money.
All right, we'll get started this morning. I think to start off first, Jim, did you have some information on the fair?
Yeah. So, we're talking about the phases. We're talking about the phases and the different projects. Money's being spent for the asphalt at the fairgrounds. These are the different phases of the project. It is not representative exactly what is occurring at this point in time because they've been able to utilize the money. They're doing a lot of the cleanup and the different portions of the construction and the asphalt themselves as well, other than the paving and packing and whatnot. And so they're able to try to get those dollars to go a little further. With that being said, they've been able to piggyback one phase onto, or a portion of one phase onto another. And so like the southern entrance there, they were able to piggyback that portion of phase 4 with phase 1. And so they've got that one done.
1 and 4 are done.
Yeah. The western part of phase 5 on the north side of the industrial building, they picked that up. So they've got like 4 to do, and that one's going to be a bugger because of the slope and grade and different manholes. They've got the backside of 5 to do. They've got one, they've got 2 to do and part of 1 on the parking lot portion a little bit as well to do. So that's the plan. Talking to Tom, he thinks if he can continue to piggyback off both sides and utilize the lower fuel costs right now, that he should be able to come well within under budget on these projects, saving the county some money. The other one, there was some question about the signs and whatnot. He gave the quotes for the sign. The first 2 are the ones for the sign and the LED on the sign out front, out by the Mexican restaurant. And so he's just providing some further information for y'all. But yeah, his hope is to have that money, have that project done as soon as possible. Polk is both of the asphalt as well as the other, as long as he can keep trying to piggyback what he can do off of one phase onto another. He's hoping he'll be well with under budget. The grandstands, he had Pope go in there and look at it yesterday. Should have some estimates or an estimate tomorrow of just an evaluation approximation what it's going to be. Greg went in and said, well, now at this point we're past code. We may lose some stalls, but they're talking about venting so that you don't get the smell that y'all know is kind of comes in to that concessionary area from the bathrooms. They're going to vent that out and away from the building. But all that, it's going to be, they're going to do most of the demolition and removal themselves, the fairgrounds, and only have the contractor come in to do the rest of it.
So that'll hopefully save some money on that portion too. So as soon as I get something from Tom on the fairgrounds, or on the grandstand, I'll send it to y'all.
So you're proposing probably now that we allot the money for all of the,
With the fuel costs lower, yeah. And keep that going, and then hopefully he should be done before proposed time.
so this is
completion.
the Jewel project, it'll turn it into the Jewel we'd all like to see.
I don't know if it'll be a jewel, it's all asphalt, so.
Well, but it's part of the shine. Got to shine your shoes, man.
But beyond that, though, the main thing is he's trying to get it done while fuel costs are down and bring that around, so it just, there you go, you got the information now.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, Peter, and then I'll come back.
I apologize. Mr. Chairman, Jim, thanks. When I first saw this aerial with the sequencing, 5-year sequencing, I was kind of excited, but then I kind of lost you a little bit in terms of what's being done, and then in my mind, still there's a question of what's been paid for, what's been budgeted, and what's down the road. Because it sounds like, it hasn't gone kind of according to this maybe original sequence, which is fine. I wonder if Tom or his people could give us maybe something that has an overlay of, put hashes across it, where it's been done. I was pretty confused yesterday when we were talking about money set aside in 1 cent, then the request for 300, and then the request for 500, and I was trying to keep that straight. So I'm not clear yet, and we can do this offline or later, but I'm still not exactly clear what's been done and what's right around the corner and what we spent.
Right, so basically, yeah, I'll have to put some hashes in here on what's done,
Great.
and then get that to you, that way you have visual representation. Better than my explanation.
Well, I'd appreciate that. I think it'll be helpful for us,
Yep.
at least me.
The only other question I had was, you made a comment that they picked up 5. Has that always been part of the plan, or was that added in now, or?
No, so during the asphalt, they picked up 4 during 1. They picked up 4.
The south part of 4?
The entire, yeah, the south gate 4. While they were doing 1, they picked up 4, the south gate 4, and they did part of the north portion of 5, right north of or the west portion of 5, just north of the industrial building.
Okay.
How much is that? And they haven't done 2 or 3 at all?
I believe they,
We can.
yeah, let me confer, just to make sure, but, yeah, so. My pen doesn't work. There we go. Any other questions, Steve?
I don't. Does anybody else have any other questions on it?
I just want to get something clear. So this was done and given to us to support the fact that they wanted to get the other 300,000 so they can finish the asphalt and put up the signs. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, it's just the requested evidence for the monies that was asked for yesterday, some of it.
Well, I agree with it. I'm glad they did this. I wish, it's good that they were able to get this out to us.
I might have an answer for you here in a second, too, Peter.
Okay.
So moving on.
All right, so then I'm going to jump back over to the assessor real quick. I did speak to Tammy this morning. You guys asked where she was coming up or arriving at the 4 positions. That's by statute. Is they have so many parcels within 6 years that they need to get to. So she said 4 positions would be great, 2 would work. She can get by with 2, but she'd prefer 4 to be able to make sure that she meets those statutory requirements. As far as the flyover goes, that alleviates some of the problems of, like, you take the weather that you have right now, and if somebody needs to go and look at parcel of land on the backside of the mountain that they may not be able to get to, that would allow them to be able to see the terrain better and be able to zero in on that property without actually having to physically send somebody up in poor weather to do that. So that was her reasoning behind those. So again, she prefers 4 people, 2 more teams basically, but can get away with 1. As far as the desks go, she said she had a conversation with Tom Poplick, who said that the cubicles between him and Marco, the cubicles that they had could work, but I mean, they can reuse what they have, but it's not optimal for the space that they're wanting to go into. However, we're talking about reconfiguring that space anyway. So the desks that she's wanting to purchase are not cubicle type, and they're not cumbersome like that. That's the main reason they're using them, but she said they could be reused if need be, so. So I hope that answers the questions there. And then, do you want to do, I guess we got parks equipment, 1 cent. That's pretty much it, employee raises after that, so.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to continue the conversation with the assessor, or do we want to come back to it after we're finished with these? What
We could
Would you
finish the
like-
assessor now.
to do?
Problem I have is that I don't have a good understanding of what we're going to do if we're going to remodel the area down there at the cost of, what, 150,000 or whatever number I heard yesterday, 125. I wasn't sure, I thought it was more than that, actually. And I did make the comment when they ask for 4, they really will take 2, but that's something that goes on in the county. But what I would like to know is the total cost of all this, and whether, just so we can understand it. I mean, so I'd like to see something that shows if we do the remodel, what that costs, the cost of the desk, which are about $570 a piece. There's 10 of them along. I don't know if the chairs were included in that or not. That was extra. People do need desks and chairs to work with, I understand that. But if you're going to reconfigure offices or just put lipstick on the offices, I don't know if that's all they need or not. But if it is, that puts the cost down. So what's the total cost? Does anybody have that in mind of giving her exactly what she wants and then deciding if the truth is, if she really needs 4 people, and she probably ought to get 4 people. They've got to be able to do their jobs and not be overburdened. If it's a seasonal sort of thing where you only need that many people during a couple, 3 months of the year, then I'd like to know that too. But right now, I don't really understand the depth of it.
Well, Commissioner Laird, I would say that the reconfiguration, we've heard a couple of things. It went from tearing down walls and opening everything up down there to not having to do that. And so I don't think anybody really has any idea what that's going to cost. We did, yesterday, we talked about removing, or taking that down to 65,000 for a complete remodel down there, and, I mean, if that's what we're gonna stick with, then they need to remodel within the confines of that amount of money, in my opinion. And then listening to her this morning, I mean, the desks themselves down there, it sounds like that they have options with the current equipment that they have, so I don't know that that's necessarily needed. As far as the positions go, she says that 2 she could get along with, and she'd prefer 4. But just like you said yesterday, she's been in there 6 months, and to be able to actually hammer things out and see how it's going to go, maybe we do start off at 2, and if she finds at the end of the year that she needs more staff, then we can revisit it next year.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a prudent approach. The statute and the Department of Revenue require inspections. It doesn't require a specific number of people or this many people per property or parcels in the county. I think that she has some real talented staff in her department, and I think that 2 will be a good place to start. If there's a hardship or, the state sends us another nice letter, or her a nice letter saying that there's maybe some concerns about compliance, well, then we can address it at that point. As far as the remodel is concerned, I like where we landed yesterday, and I'm still in favor of that, and I think you just kind of did an overview of where we were yesterday.
Well said.
So I'll summarize again. So as far as the remodel goes, we did knock that down to 65 yesterday, so I think we work within the confines of those amounts of money. The equipment they have right now, let's try and utilize that the best we can and configure it the best way we can and reuse that equipment, and then let's move forward on 2, not 4, new positions.
One thing I really would like, and I see Mr. Poplick here, is does there need to be any remodeling down there at all? There's offices that I see. Why do they need to be remodeled as opposed to painted and carpeted or whatever? I don't know if Mr. Poplick has an opinion on that, but I'd like to know. He's here.
Sure.
Yeah, well, it depends on the extent of what they wanted. With the amount of people that she had, the space could not accommodate what she was attempting to do. She wanted an open area is what she wanted, so it entails removing 2 walls to open the space up, the old commissioner's office to the hallway, and then the whole front is open. The 120 that I had asked for also does other portions. Once she moves out, there was money allocated by me to redo these other spaces that she's moving on. So that's why that number was high. Absolutely, we could do that for 60. We can give her everything downstairs. I did hear a comment about cubicles. Yes, we did have that conversation. The problem is the power. We don't have power available in that space to accommodate all the computers, printers, and everything that she wants. That was the issue. So I did factor in electrical on that. With the walls that are removed, an electrician will come in and move to a power pole setup to accommodate the desk. That was the problem. But yes, you knocking that down, absolutely, it can be done for that. Plus, I can get some more, if desks are needed, there's enough money in there. We'll do it in-house, much like we've done the other ones. I don't see a problem with the number you guys have come up with.
Okay.
Thank you.
You good with that, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the explanation.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do you want to move on to parks then? Okay.
Before we do that, I want to make a request of the sheriff. I would like some sort of a very short document, one page, from the deputies who serve on the security board with me for the Townsend, as to their, what they have observed with respect, generally with respect to what we need to do over there concerning security in the parking lot and the area where they're going to put the planters. I'd like to have that done fairly soon. I think they can do that. Bart can do that, so that the commissioners will have that information, because then I'm going to see what the judges feel comfortable with doing themselves. But I want all the commissioners to understand fully the problem and have it in writing, because I think time is of the essence on this kind of thing. Thank you. Is that okay, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think it's really a good idea to have what you did this morning, have people come in here to explain this. I wish we would have had our road and bridge supervisor do the same thing. I think it's helpful to the public when we're being asked for a lot of money for the most knowledgeable person to be here to describe the requests. So thank you for doing that this morning with Mr. Poplick, and I see Mr. Brown is here as well.
Well, I'd like to take credit for that, but they showed up on their own accord, so I appreciate them being here.
Well, they read our minds.
Bill Burton spoke in my ear yesterday that I saw.
It's a good idea. I'm glad the sheriff came in as well.
So, Madam Clerk, I'd start off with under 7101 and 7125, once repaired, maintenance and contracts, and it seems that has been a consistent $3,000 line item, but it's shown the last two cycles, nothing's been expended out of it.
Mr. Chairman, are we talking about on the mountain ending in 56?
7101, yeah, 56, Mountain. The first page.
To date, there has been 1,240 expended.
Okay, and then the next item after that is 7125. It's machinery, equipment, and purchases.
There's been 18,776 expended out of that. There's been 18,776 expended out of that. There's only $656 remaining.
7125 dash 56, 00856.
It's only a $5,000 budget.
7125? We did a transfer. We did a transfer.
On that Forerunner?
Yes. We transferred, he had it in a previous line within this department. We did a transfer, an inter-department transfer to cover that.
Okay.
And the reason, Mr. Chairman, we did that was for historical purposes. It's a more appropriate account line to take that expense out of.
Okay.
But as a whole, he did already have it within his current budget, his total budget.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, what is the current amount on 7801?
Expended for 7801?
Yeah, that's utilities.
47,679. So he's over budget in that.
Okay.
I would agree, yeah.
Is that mostly electricity from space heaters or what?
No.
So, well, electricity went up in rates. I believe that also includes our propane usage, which is for our maintenance building.
Which is what?
For our maintenance building, at this time, it's run off propane, so that includes the propane cost for that. The lodge, temporary shelters run electric only, and then we also have the livelihood with electricity, so most of it's out electricity.
Would it be cheaper if the maintenance building ran off natural gas?
There's no way to pipe it up there, so
Oh.
propane's really the only cost-effective means heating that building.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to increase that account to 50?
Yeah, is everybody good with going to 50 on that?
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
have to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
Okay.
some things we just don't have any choice.
Right.
What's been, 80/12?
There's 4,244 expended.
Say that one more time, please.
4,244.
They're requesting 40?
That is correct. It's my understanding it's for, I did the outhouse, roof, log wall repair, and the powder house roof replacement. However, there are no figures indicated in his narrative, because I think, if I'm understanding correctly, him and Mr. Poplick were having conversations or had previously had conversations. I'm not sure how far those have went. I think he also takes some sundry items out of that. Mr. Brown, am I correct on that?
I believe there may have been a few cleaning type materials and things taken out of that. I believe, my understanding from the past is the reason this was the size it was when we had the lodge and had a lot more maintenance and cleaning on the old lodge is where this came from. As for the maintenance costs, I have been unable, and not, and it's on my part, to discuss with Mr. Poplick, those three items. I did come to some information on outhouse roofs. I think we were looking at, my note that says it should not exceed 5,000 for those roofs, for each one of them, but I think it's probably even less than that. The log wall repair at Crimson Dawn is to repair a couple of logs at the base of the bunkhouse, and my staff can do that work, so it would cost, it's basically finding some logs, which we'll probably find on location to repair that with. They just rotted out. And then the powder house roof replacement, I do not have a number for that at this time. But as the clerk said, I really wasn't thinking about it, but the bulk of that could probably come out of that building repair, maintenance, and cleaning. I think we could do a significant thing into those three items I have in the maintenance cost by, to be provided by Mr. Poplick. Into this a little further.
$4,650.
There's 27,686 has been expended. There's 14,000 remaining.
Mr. Chairman, commission on that one, that is part of the K-Lin contract. I believe it was for $42,000. That was for the Summer Trail Master Plan Development, which we have a final draft. I think the remaining of that contract is probably to assist in some of the early project management and possibly some of the flagging of places for phase one.
If I could ask, what RMP implementation, is that the Rocky Mountain Power, or what is RMP?
RMP is Resource Management Plan implementation. Looking through past budgets before I got here, that's kind of sat idle. This year, I actually utilized that money to improve some of the campsites by purchasing picnic tables and fire rings. If you've seen on the mountain, some of the concrete picnic tables are ready to fall over. They have rebar exposed, some safety things. So we actually received delivery of 30 picnic tables last week to kind of implement that resource management plan and improve those sites.
Tell me what RMP stands for again, please.
Resource management plan.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you look at that line item 9066 and tell us what's been expended out of it?
27,183 has been expended. There's 11,316 left.
Well, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but it wouldn't be taking it back much, but that line item hasn't been used in the last couple cycles. This year it has been, but to the tune of a little less than 30,000. I'd say that gets moved down to 30,000. That'll halfway make up the difference on where we're at utility-wise.
What will, Mr. Chairman, what will that do to what may be intended to be purchased with that money? Sounds like it's helpful to the citizens to have decent tables and stuff to have picnics on out there. I guess I don't know what else he wants to spend the money on.
Well, my plan with that line item is to utilize it to improve and follow. There's a resource management plan from, I believe, 2012, but this money I perceive to be used as improving campground roads, actually leveling out some of the campgrounds, purchasing gravel for the roads and campground pads within the mountain area. I believe we have over 70 campsites on the mountain, so
Haven't they been improved since 2012?
not that I'm aware of, very little.
So they need to be improved now? Is that what one of the main complaints are from some of the public?
I haven't got a lot of complaints from the public, but we need to maintain our infrastructure. And I would use this line item as a phased approach to replace certain items as we go, work on 2 campsites as we go, utilize it as much as I could to improve
Give me an example of what you'd be using this money for now.
Next year, I would probably purchase gravel and use some tree cutting around dirt track to make it more accessible for larger RVs. And if there was any money left after the gravel on the road and cutting of the trees, then I would work on campsites, trying to level those out and clear those out, because nobody drives a 20-foot trailer anymore. They drive a 35, 40-foot diesel pusher motor home with 2 slides, and we have a lot of sites. I wouldn't do it for every site, but there are sites we can improve to make that more accessible for that type of camp.
Thank you. I actually like the thinking there, Mr. Chairman, in terms of, because I do know from what people who I know are in the business of motorhomes and trailers, that it's just like cars and trucks. The truck of my grandfather is 58 Chevy, would fit in the back of your new truck. So things have gotten bigger, more powerful, and wider and longer.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Michael, you said you just received 30 fire rings?
So we ordered 30 tables and fire rings. The tables have been delivered. I'm not sure when the fire rings should be coming soon.
But those have not been paid out of this, they have not been, the invoices have not been paid yet?
The vouchers were submitted before the deadline.
So was it to the tune of around $27,000?
Yeah, the rest of that came out of, we split it because I had it in, hold on. In 1% cash reserve fiscal year '23, I had $20,000 for tables and fire rings that I also utilized. So the total cost for the 30 tables and fire rings was $47,000 and something.
Okay, so it looks like that they've been posted to this current budget, so those have been taken care of. Thank you.
We have anything else on the mountain?
Mr. Chairman, I do as far as some 1 cent
Okay.
requests. So, Mr. Brown, would you come up here, please? So, in this current fiscal, he was allocated $120,000 for a shelter on the east side. So is that one complete?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I have to get the bid documents out for that. I need to follow up with legal again to make sure they're approved to be submitted,
Okay.
or advertised, sorry.
So then these are additional, that are on your narrative are additional, correct?
So the total cost for all 3 shelters is $412. I was approved last year for the $120, so I'd like to carry that over. The RDUA finding signs is, I have yet to know if we're gonna actually do that project. That fell through with, at bid time, and, hate to say it, but, communication between my department and legal didn't get that done, so that would have to be rebid if we're going to do that project.
Are we talking about 1 cent fiscal '23, Madam Clerk? Because I see RDG wayfinding and RDG implementation. Or are you talking about his narrative?
Both, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Nicolason, so at the
Okay.
the fiscal '23 cash reserve approved projects, which is on this sheet right here, Commissioner Nicolason. And then in his narrative, it's noted in there as well.
But now we don't know if we're going to do waivers.
So a little, I guess, explanation on that. I believe it was, maybe it was at the budget hearing. It was discussed that the contract, might have been at a commissioner meeting, the contract for RDG, the current one, it was kind of vague whether doing the kiosk construction would be included in that contract. Mr. Holbrook in legal provided an opinion on that and said, no, he doesn't believe that. This is for vehicular signs that the contract fell through that we bid. That low bid was I believe it was $67,900. So I've got differing thoughts on whether we should do those signs, whether or not. One of the big concerns was, do we contract that out while we're doing road construction, or do we wait and hold off longer on that? They're huge signs. They may cause some issues with snow plowing and whatnot. But we did have a subcommittee that approved what was on those signs. So this has just kind of sat a little bit idle. And I guess I probably should get a new opinion on whether we should do these. The other reason I've delayed is Visit Casper is showing interest in providing vehicular wayfinding signs from David Street Station all the way up to Mountain. So if they were to do this, we could have some cost savings if we bid together. Last conversation I had with Tyler there was a month ago, maybe a little bit more, and they haven't really formalized whether they were gonna do that or not.
Mr. Chair.
Peter?
I've heard from a few people that it would be nice to improve signage up there. I've heard from a few people that we could do it at a fraction of the cost if we did it internally or locally or a combination. I'm not gonna second guess what the committee suggested, although it seems like a lot of money. It also seems like we're not getting any traction on this. It seems that we don't even know if Visit Casper's gonna contribute some, all, or none of the cost of some project. To me, it's exceedingly hard to feel good about budgeting $75,000 based on all these unknowns. So my feeling is, we knock it down to $5,000. We encourage Mr. Brown and his department to make progress, and when there's a concrete proposal for this commission to review and approve and a specific number, then we do that, hoping that it's this summer, not next summer or some later point in the future. That's how I look at this.
Well, if I can add to that, my understanding is that wayfinding on the mountain is on hold anyways until that road gets reconstructed. It doesn't make sense to put wayfinding signs up when we're gonna tear all that up, which is not gonna happen until next season anyways. So I think that should just come off the board altogether, not to get rid of the project, but don't budget anything this year because you're not gonna be spending any money this year, and get a solid number as to what that project's gonna cost next year, and then return back at that time with a good solid number.
And if there, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I think that's great, and I think that if at that point Mr. Brown or his department have specific contributors, whether it's Visit Casper or others, then provide us with that information too, so we can look at it as a whole, holistically, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, and what I'm looking at is you have this approved 1 cent cash reserve sheets in the front of your budget. So I was trying to make sure that they're not duplicated requests, or where we are on the projects that were approved this current fiscal on what, we need to budget for, if we're going to take it out of cash reserve, that type of thing. So that's kind of the comparables I'm doing right now. It's in I think it's in a folder in the very front of your book. So my next one is the lodge. So in fiscal '23, out of cash reserve, we allocated 1.6 million for the lodge. I know that number's low, but just so you're aware, that was allocated, and 1 cent cash reserve, which I understand, that project's going to take time, and, but that had been allocated in 1 cent reserve.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Brown, do you keep a log of all your projects and the dates when they were authorized, the dates when you start them, and the dates when you, showing what work you've done as we go, and then on a perceived ending date? Do you do that?
I don't have a overall project log, but I do have my files that typically have notes on the outside of them that say, this is when we started, this is when we finished.
Be nice if we had something like what I just suggested presented to us, where we could look at, because I've heard about the road being redone, and I've heard about the signs, and people are upset about the signs, and now it's going to be, sounds to me like another, at least maybe 2 years. But and I'll just say that in my own business, we have to keep a log of all the cases we have, when they came in, there's a statute of limitations on all of them. You have to have a lawsuit filed within a certain period of time. And then when it does get filed, the court issues their order saying you're going to be in court on such and such a date to do this. You have to be ready to do it. You shouldn't be asking for continuances. And if you just follow that flow, it's amazing how much you can get done. Because if it's just a big pile of papers sitting on a desk with files, you just don't have anything to look at to remind you daily that, oh my God, the statute of limitations on this case is due today. Because if we miss the statute of limitations, it's very costly and can be a problem. So I was hoping that the county might start thinking about that. And it sounds to me like your division would benefit if you could come up with an idea of how to log everything in, so you could sit here and hand each commissioner a sheet showing all the projects you're working on, when they started, what they're costing, when the perceived date is, because all of this stuff about way signs I heard during the election. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stuff that just doesn't ever seem to get done. And so I don't know why it didn't get done. Good reason, no reason, problems with COVID, but I'd sure like to know. So I'm just.
I can definitely create a log. I'll go through my files and.
It'll help you more than it will us, I guarantee you. And then you can come in here and take you 5 minutes to show everybody what's going on and where the stages of these projects are. Because right now, I guess the lodge up there, that's hovering around in the ethers. These other things you're building that should be 4, I guess there's 1, but it hasn't even been started yet. So, because I'm like Mr. Nicolason, I hear from the same people he does, that they don't understand why we're not getting it done. So it would be a help, because we could even post that on a website so people would know when things are getting done. And then our public would be a lot happier, because they could track it themselves, and you could track it. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chairman, moving through I don't have anything on the Crimson Dawn fencing. However, on the new water line to the lodge, there is $350,000 allocated in fiscal 17, or fiscal 24 of 1 cent 17.
325, is that what you said?
350, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, can we go back to Crimson Dawn fencing?
Yep.
I thought we had taken that out, and the other idea I thought was tossed about was utilizing some of the trees from, that are going to be harvested from the additional parking at the lodge site, and hauling those up the hill and over there to put them along the East End Road, kind of the area that's the worst.
Right. I have not looked at those trees myself. I talked with my field super. A lot of those trees in that area are too large a diameter for your typical buck rail fencing. But I'll investigate that further and utilize that. This is, that wasn't a high priority thing. It's been requested. I think the Parks Board mentioned it. However, we need to continue to set it back even further than we have from the road because my staff several years ago set it back 25 feet and it still got wiped out with the plowing. So if we're gonna rebuild a fence, we need to set it back even further to try and keep it upright. The other thing with Crimson Dawn is trying to, I have not heard any more communication if they're gonna actually apply and be part of the state historic preservation site, which that'll also limit what we can and cannot do there even further. So I haven't heard any communication on that. I also haven't raised my hand asking. That's probably just because I didn't want to handle that at the time with the other projects I'm doing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown, sometimes companies that might be interested in harvesting or buying that bigger diameter timber where the new lodge is going to be located, also build and sell buck rail fencing materials. There could be a trade opportunity or something like that at the appropriate time. I think that we ought to take Crimson Dawn fencing off for the reasons you mentioned, and I also know that we're going to be adding to the 1.6 for the new lodge, and so if we can cut in a few places, I think it makes sense. And then finally, on the bear trap shelters, the conversation last year, as I recall, when we did the 120 allocation was, we know that'll cover one, but let's see if the contractor, the bidder, gives us something we like enough for the dollars that are going to make sense, and then maybe we have an add-on. Maybe we do a total of 2 or a total of 3. I thought that's how we were planning to approach it, not to do a lump sum allocation of 412.
Yeah, this was just my ask. This was carried over a little bit from the previous budget, from the previous parks director. The bid documents actually state to provide a bid for the east shelter along with alternate bid for the other shelters so that we would have pricing in there. It's a matter of getting that bid out to advertisement. And I'm going to follow up this week with legal on that again and see if I can't get that cleared to go. But, you know, I pursued the grant last fall trying to vamp up the money for the shelters, and that was an outdoor rec grant, and I was denied that grant. So I don't have any outside money for all 3 shelters, but I wanted to bring it up. That way, if we did like the alternate bids, at least there was funding allocated for it. But I understand if we go just to the one shelter.
I would personally like to go just one shelter. I mean, we've already gone a year and we still don't have that built or even out of legal at this point in time. So I'd prefer we just stick with that 120, do one shelter this year coming up. As far as the Crimson Dawn fencing, I agree. I think there's options there with the harvesting of the trees from the lodge area that whether it's a trade or not, it definitely would cut that down. So I would ask, in my opinion, I think we need to take that 250 out of there. Commissioner Milne and myself have been in conversations with the 2 bidders for the lodge on the mountain, and the price has actually been reduced. I remember where we're at, 3 million something.
2.78, I thought,
Well,
but we were waiting on the architect.
Well, we were over 3 million.
Yes.
And we had another one over 4 million, and we've got that down to roughly 2.7 million, a little over that right now. We have 1.6 allocated. So I think by taking some of these projects out of here, that's potentially gonna, you potentially got almost 500,000 right there. We will need to increase that for the lodge by 1.25 million to be able to actually make that project happen. And so that's what I would propose, is that if we have the funding there, we'd be able to take some of these projects off the table for right now and add 1.25 to the 1.6 for the lodge so we can get that moving.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, these numbers, this 1 cent funding request that he asked for are not in these worksheets. They are 1 cent reserve projects, a lot of them. So when we start talking about the 1 cent, we can certainly add the 1.25 to the lodge under the 1 cent reserve and the shelters, if that is fine
Okay.
from you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, you said something that has concerned me a little bit due to a legal issue, and I'm sure you've looked into it, but I haven't heard about it yet from legal, and that is the issue with the lodge and the reducing of the bid amounts. I just want to make sure we're following the statute that requires these matters be bid, because I know they can be ticklish, but I haven't seen a legal opinion on this process yet, but I sure would like to see one.
So we did not move forward without talking to legal about it, and we have talked to all parties involved, and we have followed exactly what we needed to follow.
Good. Do we actually have a written legal opinion? I would recommend that if we don't have one. Because I am completely unaware of what you just said, and I believe what you just said, but I'd like to see a written legal opinion on that, because I say I've seen problems with that particular statute over the years.
I wasn't involved with the legal discussion after the bids came in, so I'm not aware of.
We have it covered by legal at this point in time. I will provide you with the documentation that
Thank
you
you.
need.
Thank you.
Dallas.
Anything else on the mountain, or you to sit down?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more. I'm sorry to keep beating a dead horse. Mr. Brown, in this fiscal '23 and 1 cent cash reserve, you were allocated $30,000 for some OSHA fuel tanks. Are those
Those have
complete?
been purchased and installed.
Did we get the invoice in by the deadline?
Yes,
So those are complete?
those are complete.
Okay, thank you.
The tandem axle trailer is complete.
Yeah, I saw those. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anything else on the mountain? Okay. Move to the lake funds.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like we have, based on the worksheet here that says April 30th, a lot of unexpended funds for the current fiscal year. See about 8 of them, maybe. So I don't know if we're going to go over those specifically, or, some of those are smaller amounts. But I certainly had some questions on whether or not to carry over to this current budget year of the same amount makes sense. I think it's kind of the same theme we've been dealing with.
Yeah, we take them line by line if you want to start.
7101, 0857.
There's $2,564 remaining.
Okay. The next one is 7125.
There's $12,348 remaining.
Which one was that, sorry?
7125. $12,348 remaining.
Stationary printed materials. I'm sorry, that's 7406.
1795 remaining.
In the one right above it, 7101, is only a $500 postage box rent item. Just not even sure why we have that in the cards. Is there a separate PO box or?
I'm assuming so, yes.
Chairman Nicholas, and we share a PO box in Mills Post Office with Road and Bridge. And so that PO box rent is split between Road and Bridge Department.
Madam Clerk, please, 12.
There's 32,263 remaining.
That's in buildings repair maintenance.
Correct.
Excuse me, Commissioner Nick Lason, would you mind turning on your microphone? I'm having difficulty hearing you.
You bet.
Thank you.
You bet, sorry. $84.22.
There's $4,562 left.
Madam Clerk,
Remaining, right?
Remaining, correct.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, are there any of these that are over the current budget?
Yes, utilities. I'm sorry. Let me get back to that report. It blinked out on me, or I hit something. I apologize.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Be just a moment. Okay. Utility services is over 3,167. Grounds maintenance landfill, which is 8011, is over 14,700. 8501 motor fuels is over 8,835.
Say that number one more time.
8,835, that's for motor fuels. And that looks like, that's all that's over.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
$9061 capital equipment.
There's 157,100 left. However, I believe there's a couple vouchers that are sitting, waiting to be paid. I'm not quite sure the exact total.
$90.67.
Nothing's been expended.
I'm sorry, one more time. How much, 7801, how much did that go over so far?
3,167.
Mr. Chairman, does anybody have any percentages of ideas of what the utilities are going to, hike is going to be in the next year? Because I'd read somewhere where one of them was raising it 20 or 30%.
This Pacific Power.
Yeah. Just bear that in mind, I guess.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, on trailer court water line, $100,000 approved last year. I don't believe any's been expended this year. You've got it again. Is that this coming fiscal year, or is that just a maybe someday?
That's this coming fiscal year. The plan is to issue an RFP and get an engineer under contract to review that water system and design a new water system. That system's 50-plus years old and at end of life and needs to be done. The reason for the delay on not issuing that is I requested from the Bureau of Rec a letter determining if lake revenue can be used for private exclusive use. It's clear that we can. They have a little bit of verbiage in there. I need to understand a little better about the water line being done with our water and sewer restricted fund, which does not have the funds to do a replacement. But at least we can get the study done, find out what needs to be done and how to do it.
So to clarify, is the $100,000 just for the study?
Yes, it's for the engineer, and it may be coming in less than that. That number was, I'm not sure where that number came from. I think that may have come from the previous parks director. I was learning the budget phase last year when this budget, 22-23 was done. I'm trying to recollect where that number came from, but it wouldn't surprise me if it approaches that. We have 155 trailers, 22 full hookup sites, marina, ski club, and boat club that are all tied into that system. So it's going to be a pretty intensive study and probably a pretty intensive design that we can use for bid to replace it.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any idea how much that's going to cost to replace it?
Honestly, no. I mean, I can give you my opinion off the top of my head.
Give it.
$2.3 to $2.5 million.
And it needs to be done?
There's sections of it, yes. We constantly replace leaks. A lot of the system is non-conforming. There's some EPA requirements coming down the line that are going to require us to replace a bunch of that pipe due to lead restrictions and whatnot. So yeah, it's coming. I don't know how soon, but it's going to have to be done sometime.
Mr. Chairman, and then during Mr. Brown's budget presentation, you asked him to prioritize his lake capital expenses, the 9061, and he prioritized 4 out of those projects, I guess. I didn't know if you wanted to revisit that as well.
Mr. Chairman, I had that we took out the gator and the trailer.
Correct, and then I had priority 1, the EPA required generators for the water and sewer. Number 2 being the trailer bathhouse, electrical and interior. Number 3 being 10 more outhouse doors and frames, and number 4 being picnic tables and fire rings.
Yep.
So if you went with those four priorities, it'd be 185,000. Is that correct? If I'm doing my math right.
Sure.
Because if we take out the gator and the gooseneck, that's 65,000 off that 250, which should bring it down to 185.
Mr. Chairman, just, we've been working on the trailer bathhouse. We've got some of the electrical to where it's actually working. I want to say that we don't need to use those funds to replace the old breaker box, because you can't purchase those breakers anymore, so we're gonna possibly need to upgrade some of it so that it doesn't continue to fail.
Any thoughts on those?
I'm okay with 185.
Some of that stuff we just need to get done, so.
Okay. So we'll take those two projects out, but go forward with the other four, with the 185.
Okay, and then on the same page, there's additional projects that are listed under 9070. I put in the number 1.5. I did not add the 800 for the new shop. I thought that was something that would probably take a little more time and discussion.
I guess the question that I have on these additional projects are, what is the status? Are we going to get to them this year?
Mr. Chairman, the completion of dive-based construction, that's no longer 1.25 million left in that contract. There's $501,000 left in that contract. The Pathfinder walking bridge repair in 2021, an engineer was hired to look at that walking bridge across right below Pathfinder Dam. He provided a report that's very clean cut, very specific, that we can send out in our request for bid for that work. So I'd like to get that going. I did not do that last year due to the fact that we were spending most of these funds for the dive-based construction. Currently, that bridge is blocked off with chain link, so people can't walk on it due to the repairs that need to be done.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So instead of 1.25 million, all we need for diabase completion is $511,000, is that what I heard?
Correct, $501,718.26.
And I think in answer to the chairman's question, that can be done this coming fiscal year?
Yes, so dive-based construction will be finished by the 4th of July.
And then Pathfinder Walking Bridge, how did you come up with the $200,000 number?
That's just an approximation based off of the welding, the location. All tools and equipment are gonna have to be hand carted up to that bridge. They're gonna have to have safety carriages, safety harnesses to hang over. They did an inspection, they used a tripod type lowering device to hang somebody over the edge of that bridge. It's right in the middle of the canyon, just below the dam. I expect it's gonna be expensive just because where it's at and hand hauling materials to it.
So that'll be done by a third party?
Yes.
But you haven't consulted anyone for a ballpark on that?
I'd have to look through my file. We may have consulted the engineer that inspected it. And that may be, I'll have to look at it. I honestly don't remember. That came from him in 21 or not.
I would cut that one in half.
I'd say option, as in like not do it this year again.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. Until we have.
I would agree. You have an engineer that came in 2021 and we're throwing a number at something. The frustrating theme of this budget process for me so far has been numbers that get thrown at something, but nothing to back it up and no bids to back it up. So in my opinion, I would agree with Commissioner Milne that I would probably cut this year, and let's do what we need to do as far as getting bids done, so that when we request money, we have a solid foundation of which to request it on.
So not line 9070, Madam Clerk, I think just is 511,000 and change.
Actually, I think it's 502.
501, 718.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Oops. Glad people-
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, have you ever, since you've worked here, been giving any organizational rules by any commission as to how you should proceed before you ask for money?
No,
That's what I thought. Thank you very much.
and to expand on that a little bit, it's difficult to request a bid when you don't have funding to possibly award that. I've had trouble with a lot of contractors over the last year and a half that they just don't want to deal with the county anymore because of how long things take
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I guess I need a clear understanding of what the procedures are, for sure.
Yeah, I'm noticing that in these budget hearings, and I'm comparing it to my service on the hospital board years ago, where we hired a company to come in and give the board an education. And the one thing I remember from that education is the employees can sometimes only be as good as what the rules, ground rules and procedure are. And if you don't have any, then everybody's kind of running around lost. And interestingly enough, a professor at the University of Wyoming wrote a book on the entire subject in the 50s, and it was used by General MacArthur to rebuild Japan. A lot of people don't know that. But it applies in restaurants, it applies in legal offices, it applies in county, where there is a set of rules that everybody goes by and knows what they have to do to complete their job and what is going to be required of them when they come into a meeting like this and when they submit budgets. And I don't know of any rules we have written on that. I haven't seen any.
Commissioner Laird, could we stick to the budget? We need to
Yes,
get through
I
this
will, but I
process.
wanna-
That's something we can take up at another time.
It is
with our
something, I'm just
employees.
alerting the commission to it, because it isn't, some of this isn't the fault of the employees. Some of it is the fault of not having these rules in place.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Can we go back to Parks Mountain, please? 56. Was it your intent on the RMP implementation 9066 to reduce that, or to leave it at the 38,500?
Well, I asked about reducing that, but I didn't really, I said to reduce it down to 30, but I think Commissioner Laird was the only one that spoke about that and not wanting to do that. Anybody have any? I mean, if you look across the board, we haven't expended anything on that until this year with the fire rings. And that didn't even quite hit 30,000, so that's why I came up with a $30,000 figure on that. It's the second one from the bottom on Mountain.
On Mountain.
Mr. Chair, I understand what you're saying, but I also know how much work we've got to do at the campgrounds up there on the mountain this year, over the next couple of years, as far as maintenance, leveling out stuff, and,
Potentially the road to Ponderosa, some of that.
it's good, yeah, we can utilize that whole amount. I mean, there's a lot of work that really needs to be done up there that hasn't been done, that this gives us an area that we can actually utilize that funding for that. So That's my, I would just soon leave it where it is instead of taking that out. Because part of the problem is we just haven't had the resources to get some of this stuff done. And now we're moving forward, and hopefully we can get some of it taken care of here in the next year. So I would
Let's
just
leave
assume
it
leave
as
it in
is.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then one last thing, in the 39 line item, he had asked for 40,000 for picnic tables and fire rings at the mountain, so that's in the equipment line item 39 request that we haven't addressed yet. And that is on page 2 of his narrative on the top.
Mr. Chairman, Michael, how many fire rings will that provide for us about, and tables for that 40,000 in the capital outlay?
Probably upwards of 50. I requested 40, which we requested last year, and it was dropped to 20, which we did utilize this year. So $47,000 got us 30 campsites, and I think we have somewhere around 40 left.
And that's for the mountain, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So thoughts on, do we need to do all those at one time, or could we cut that in half and phase it in over a 2-year period?
We've been doing a little at a time, as long as we have that on the slate. Michael, how do you feel about just prioritizing which ones we really need to get done? And
Yeah, I'm fine doing it a step at a time. I know that infrastructure kind of hasn't been upgraded in 10 years, maybe 1 or 2 tables at a time. But yeah, if we could do the 20 grand and utilize that to get, somewhere around 14 tables and fire rings, that would definitely improve the situation.
Okay, thanks.
Let's go 20 grand on that then.
Thank you.
Did we have anything else in here then? Or anybody with anything else on the mountain or lake? Okay.
Do we, excuse me, sorry. Do we want to increase the motor fuels line a little bit?
I think we need to. Prices are gonna continue to go up
They're down now, aren't they?
right now, but that doesn't mean.
No,
will
it
be
doesn't mean,
over
it
the
just
next
means
year.
now, is what I
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
He's over by 8.
Is it,
That's 25, so.
30% up, wouldn't it be, Jim?
Well, I think we'd be okay if we left it there and go back to it, but, or we just bump it up to 40 and call it good.
I think we ought to bump it to 40 and just call it.
And Mr. Chairman, in the lakes?
Yeah. 8501, 57.
And we've expended 33.8.
So he's pushing the request already this year.
I do have a posting for June already, however, there might be another one that hasn't been posted yet, I'm not sure.
So bump that to 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, has any commissioner faced the issue where somebody's run out of money and they've come back in sometime during the year and asked for money?
Mhm.
How do they do that? What's the procedure for that? If they need to do it.
Madam Clerk, will you?
She says they're running out of money, you
summarize
guys need to consider this, is that how it works?
Well, kinda.
In a simplistic matter, yes.
Could you give me an explanation real quick, please?
Basically, if they're running out of money, they will come to the commissioners and present their case, and then provided on what our current financial situation is, then the board will look at it, address it, and go forward, and then I make a budget adjustment.
Yeah, thank you. But something like fuel, you'd be able to catch that yourself, wouldn't you? I mean, if you saw them drawing it down where it was likely that it would run short.
Yes, however, it is bottom line budgeting, so, I like to keep those accounts as accurate as possible for historical reasons, obviously, for these discussions right here. But then, say if we get at the end of the budget and we run out of time where we can't do a budget transfer and his bottom line is okay, then we just let it go. But then, as we're doing the next budget, we'll use it for a historical purpose.
Yeah. I'm just trying to, in my mind, contemplate, instead of using a crystal ball, that we do it scientifically. So I'm trying to gather as much information as I can on how we do this so I can think about it.
And some of these, again, are hard to predict, obviously, but a lot of the department heads and the electeds have been doing this for a while, so they know what it takes to run their departments with a lot of confidence, I do believe, so.
Thank you.
So you want to move on to the 1 cent?
Sure.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, in the back of your books, you have the 1 cent schedule. That was, it's a 4-year schedule, it's 1 cent 17. Those projects were approved in October of '22, if my memory serves me. Now, we can go down, because there's some adjustments that I need to speak about. We can go department by department if you would like. It's up to you.
Whatever is the easiest way for you to attack it, that's what we'll do.
It was my intention to get these put in alpha order, and I did not get to do that, but since Road and Bridge is on top, that is one that I would like to, or would need to discuss.
Okay.
So, according to Mr. Hagler's narrative, and it's on page 2 of his actual budget narrative, he's asking for a haul truck, pickups, a blade, utility box, so on and so forth. If you look at the 1 cent schedule, it doesn't match. So, in the past, we have adjusted the 1 cent to meet Mr. Hagler's needs. So I guess I'll just start out saying that, and we can just kind of muddle through it.
Mr. Chairman? So, his narrative says 1 cent 16 funding, but that's a typo, I would imagine.
I'm not sure,
'Cause
to
it-
be honest with
Okay,
you.
well, in any case, it looks like he's asking for $977,000 for fiscal year '24 on his narrative, and we've only allocated 110,000 for fiscal '24.
That's where I guess my confusion lies. Now, I will say he was granted in fiscal '23 out of cash reserve, he was granted for a haul truck and 3 pickups. So if that's the case, then the first 2 items on his narrative have been addressed with 1 cent reserve. And I have a note that the haul truck is pending, and it looks like he's bought the pickup, so. I guess I'm a little confused as well.
It's a big difference.
So he was granted, out of 1 cent reserve, $312,156 for a haul truck and 3 pickups.
Do we need an explanation from him, Mr. Chairman? Sounds like maybe we do. Maybe we can get him on the phone and ask him.
Yeah, the amount would be 310 for those 3.
And he was granted 312. So if that's, not additional, then we could just, because I'm sure the haul truck, based on the supply chain, is probably an issue.
So he got 1 haul truck and 2 pickups already.
I'm going to say he has purchased 3 pickups, and the haul truck is pending. But he was approved for a haul truck and 3 pickups, this current fiscal cash reserve, 1 cent reserve.
Is the haul truck been approved under the 1 cent?
1 cent reserve.
Could you explain to me what that means?
That's previous 1 cent that has not been expended, that we take expenditures out of.
Thank you.
I can certainly try to email him, or if someone wants to. Okay. So I guess we'll wait on that, if you don't mind. And maybe looking at the 1 cent 16 approved for '23, maybe this is just a note. This is not really what he's asking for, because in 1 cent 16, he was allocated a blade, the utility box, that kind of thing. So I guess I'm unclear what the intent of the request is.
Right, and how it might impact fiscal years '25, '26, and '27.
Correct. And also, he has, gravel for roads on here, which is not in any of the documentation that I have. Well, actually, it's in 1 cent 16. He had that, so maybe I need to have a further conversation with Mr. Hagler and get all this pinned down. Okay? I can
Okay.
take the lead on that if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is the fairgrounds. I think we addressed that already, or we can go into further discussion if you'd like.
Are we good with that, or do we have further discussion on it?
Now, please remember, these were approved in October. There's a resolution passing these. However, as you've seen, we can add figures to this like we did for the tractor, or we can move the dates or the years around based on 1 cent revenue, but this has already been sent out to the departments. So, we try not to tweak it. The one thing, if you look at, on your worksheet, on your Excel worksheet, I did put in for those, the development plan cleanup, I did plug it into this budget request, the 100,000. However, it's not included in the 1 cent schedule. So 2 questions. One, do we want it included in the 1 cent schedule or take it out of reserve? And if anything, and if you want to do that, what amount? I would suggest if you were to fund it at any level that we would do the 1 cent reserve.
Is this the one, Mr. Chairman, that we set a limit on for each cleaning? I forget, what was that, $3,000 or $1,500?
Well, and this is for the neighborhood cleanups, correct?
This is specifically for the neighborhood cleanups, it's my understanding.
Yep.
I think, in speaking to Ms. Turner, they're trying to get on a schedule to get several done in a fiscal. I believe it's 3 to 4, get on a regular schedule to get these done. And I think it's about 25,000 per cleanup, 25 to 30 per cleanup, and she was going to target 3 to 4 cleanups per year.
Is this a statutory requirement that we do this?
A neighborhood cleanup?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would say no.
I just have a problem with it fundamentally.
I actually had somebody come to me last night and tell me how much they appreciated the fact that it was out there and that their neighborhood was able to get cleaned up, so I don't know that we need to go to $100,000, but yeah.
Mr. Chairman. No, no. I can't wait for it to come to the Cold Creek Road area.
It was already there once. That's the one that they commented on last night.
Well, I think our range crew messed up. We had a bunch of, and I think they called the sheriff, I know they called the sheriff's office. We had, somebody was moving out and left their queen bed mattress and some appliances right at the end of the Coal Creek Road, and everybody, like our guys got to drive by it, and then we just ultimately cleaned it up. Anyway, so, yeah, these are good things, I think.
So are we good at cutting it in half?
I am. I mean, if we need to readjust it, we can later.
We could take it down to 50 and take it out of the reserve so that she can at least do a couple of them per year. I don't think we should either, but situations like that where people throw it off the side of the road and somebody else is gonna have to clean the mess up, so.
The other one that fell through the cracks, maybe not, I'm not sure. When we were discussing the 1 cent 17 back in October, was the Conservation District. Historically, we have allocated 50,000 for selenium something or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yes. We did not approve that in 1 cent 17, so I wanted to bring that forth. Yes,
Did they allot money for it?
we did not, no. Now, whether, I'm not sure if it was in the original 1 cent 17 request. I could go back and check, when those requests were sent in way back. Was it August of 2022 or something?
I don't ever remember seeing that. I know they requested stuff, but I don't remember seeing it in the 1 cent.
And so you'd suggest taking it out of reserve?
Yes.
Guys, this is a huge project. It's been ongoing forever, and we need to support it. selenium cleanup it's coming through, that they've got reduced, that's actually going down into the river. No other county, no other state has had as positive results as what this conservative district has had. We need to continue to support it.
I agree with that, 100%.
Pure and simple. I mean,
It's a serious health problem to the people. I know the city's addressing it. We should be addressing it as well.
You know, this is a big deal in the Casper Alcove Irrigation District area and in other areas as well. And I have been hearing about it for years too. I would support this, but I'd also like to find out kind of where the money's been spent and kind of what the future looks like moving forward. Maybe this fall sometime we can have somebody come in.
they did have a big meeting with KIDA and everybody here recently, where they went over all that. But yeah, I think having them come in and explain this to everybody would be great. But
Lisa's come in just about every year
Yeah.
and talked about this, and it's a project that has been going on, changing
last year.
changing the irrigation practices, and it has made a big difference as far as how much selenium is actually being taken down through the waterways, so.
Is it my understanding that the former commissioners turned this down? Or-
No,
Okay.
No, I don't think it.
I don't think it made it on the 1 cent request last time around.
Let's remember.
Even hearing about it.
No, but we have supported it in the past, so.
Okay, thank you. Two things that affect me. So there shouldn't even be a discussion because it should just be okay, right?
I think it's an amendment.
Okay. If you note, under the county clerk, it's about halfway down the page. In fiscal '26, there was an election equipment that was approved that I had to beg for, but I appreciate it. Thank you. So I will need that this fiscal to be able to utilize it for the election next year.
Is this the trailer thing?
Yes. Why I agreed for it to be taken out to fiscal '26 is beyond me. I think I was just so happy to get it that I was agreeing with anything that you said at the time.
Yeah, I think a bargain's a bargain, right? Find a hand-me-down from the sheriff, like on some of the trucks.
Doesn't the corner have a used trailer?
Yeah, he does. She'll have to clean it out, though.
I'm fine with that.
I think we're probably lucky that we're being videoed right now, but no. So seriously, I would respectfully ask that be pushed or moved to fiscal '24, please.
Everybody okay with it?
Yeah, what took you so long to get one? That's all I want to know.
Whatever she says is
We approved
good
it
with me.
last year.
You approved it last year for fiscal '26, and I had to beg, borrow, and steal for it to even be approved then.
So who are you bumping then on this?
It's $10,000. I'm not bumping anybody. Maybe something that'll affect the
She's just checking to see if we're all still awake.
On the same note, another item that I had to beg for, but this is under the IT department, and that's probably the reason why it was approved, is the pool vehicle.
The what?
A pooled vehicle.
Like a floaty thing for the, it's like your kids.
No, a vehicle.
Don't confuse me. Please don't confuse me any more than I need to be.
A vehicle that we all, we can all share when
Yeah.
we're traveling and whatnot. So that is this current fiscal, and it's 50,000. However,
Is it a Ford F-150?
I'm hoping to look at SUVs and whatnot, but with that, I just wanted to make sure if my thought process on the type of vehicle was amenable to the commissioners because of the discussions we've had on the other vehicles and whatnot. So I just wanted to make sure, do you think an SUV type is,
What about a
suitable
van?
for a van?
It would seat more people. How many people you want in the seat in this thing?
4 to 6 maybe, at any given time.
And luggage and stuff? So it'd be a van, possibly. Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to make sure, since we'd had previous discussions on the type of vehicles, I wanted to make sure you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think an SUV makes sense for a pool vehicle, so if you have to have 4 employees or 2 employees and 2 guests.
But since it's for IT, we're in a meeting or something like that.
It's not for IT.
Because then you got the wide sliding doors, you can fit your servers.
It is not for IT, it is for travel. It just happened to be approved under the IT budget because the commissioners gave me a $10,000 trailer, which was too much apparently. So,
Some SUVs are pretty small. They wouldn't hold 4 people in luggage or 6 people in luggage.
You're gonna get something like that though, all seriously, I'd say, at least 3 rows. Something that has 3 rows so you can fit enough.
so do you think the 50,000 will cover that? Okay.
Depends on the kind. If you buy a Sprinter, they're about 110.
I'm not looking at Cadillac.
It's not a Cadillac, it's a Mercedes.
Mercedes.
Definitely not buying a Mercedes.
Might last for 20
It'll
years.
be a small third row, but I can't recall who's got what for excess vehicles out there. I'm assuming that you're more in tune with that, whether it's planning or, the old Tahoe or the old Equinox or whatever.
Right, so previously, we had borrowed from the assessor's office when we were traveling, and they had them available because of the time of the year, the field crew wasn't out. Also, the Toyota that's out here now, that, everyone's calling it a pool vehicle, and it's not truly a pool vehicle. It is for the planning, the development department, planning, and the legal department. They combined some resources to buy that one. So I traveled last week, I did use that one, but that was not the intent of that particular vehicle. That was not to be used for a pool vehicle as a whole. So this is the true intent of this vehicle.
Mr. Nicolason, something came to me. I'm sure you'll be interested. The classic vehicle that's coming back on the market is around $50,000, and it's electric, so we don't have issues with fuel. Let me finish, just a minute, let me finish. It's the old traditional VW van that went out of style. Now they're going to turn it into an electric vehicle.
And we could put a charging station instead of Miss Good having a parking spot. We'll put a charging station.
Put a charging station right there, and you can pull that baby in, and it'll be ready to go at all
We don't have
times.
enough power in the building, so we can't do that.
Yeah, in all seriousness,
Mr. Chairman, it was just a joke.
I think we're all cognizant of not wanting a parking lot full of vehicles that get used once a month. And so if we're moving in the right direction where we're actually using these vehicles on a regular basis, then I don't have an issue with it.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Nicolason, I appreciate that. I travel 2 to 3 times a year. I know Eileen is on a task force now that she has been traveling to Cheyenne quite frequently. So I feel there's a use for it personally, and I think some of my colleagues would agree. It's, like I said, the assessor's office was great in allowing us to take their vehicles that they weren't using, but if it's at the inopportune time, then taking the leftover vehicles or the older vehicles that are out at Road and Bridge is kind of sketchy.
The only question I would have is this vehicle, you were talking about the pool vehicle that's not really one. How often does that get used and is it newer? I mean, does it have,
We just bought it.
okay.
We just bought it this current fiscal. And like I said, Eileen's utilized it a lot. I can't speak for legal and risk management and all of them that use it. I don't know how often they use it. I used it. But they did trade 2 or 3 to come up with this one for their department. So I'm not sure the consistency of the usage on that.
Okay.
I appreciate your graciousness. Thank you.
Tracy, is it all for in-state use?
I travel in-state. As far as I know, it's going to be within Wyoming, yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I would say the 99.9% would be within Wyoming. I think those were the only odd ones I had regarding the 1 cent. As I talked before, looking at the equipment request, previously, we had moved some of those equipment requests. When I say previously, in prior budgets, we've moved some equipment requests to 1 cent reserve. So there's that option. So I didn't know if you wanted to visit that now or if you would want to move into something further.
As far as moving into 1 cent reserve?
Correct.
Yeah.
Like perhaps maybe transferring things that are requested in the 39 account into 1 cent reserve. I guess we can look at our bottom line and versus our revenues and see if we need to make those type adjustments.
Until we see that,
Well, do we need to talk about the reserves as far as putting that additional money on for the lodge? The lodge?
I have that note, so, on the lodge.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then you're going to talk to Mike.
Yes, I'll talk to Mike. Yeah, I think he's out in the field, so I'll get a hold of him. If you want to look at your fiscal '23 approved projects that look like this, we can. It looks like development has expended, for the most part, what their intent was. The fairgrounds, I think we're still kind of pending some information on that. Is that correct, Commissioner Milne? As far as
He sent a
bleachers?
map in that shows what's been completed, but pretty much what I've, well, let's see if we show that off.
And there's an invoice pending for the asphalt, so I'm going to say that's been expended. The equipment, the bleacher seats, the first set of bleacher seats has been expended. The equipment, as of the 9th, I only show 114,000, but maintenance, that's been taken care of. We did discuss the parks with Mr. Brown. I will speak to Mr. Hagler about Road and Bridge. So that's the status of the reserve project. So I think we're sitting pretty good. It doesn't look like much will need to be carried over other than perhaps maybe road and bridge
And the bear trap shelter.
and the shelters and perhaps the lodge.
Mhm. Yep,
Yeah, and the
Yep.
lodge.
1.25.
This 1.6.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that you're bumping?
Any questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to know the bottom line number for fiscal '23, when we have it, and maybe you got to talk to.
As far as expended,
Yeah, I mean, expended, if we had in there, what did we have approved?
4.5.
4.513, yeah.
As of 6/9, 1.5 has been expended. But the majority of that, again, is the lodge, is, so I would say, because the deadline has passed for submitting vouchers, other than possibly Mr. Hagler, most of these, if they're not finished, then the money, we would not carry it forward.
So 3.3 potentially in that opportunity, or
Reserve,
where,
1 cent reserve.
sorry,
That's okay. I know, there's a lot.
not opportunity.
And throughout the year, there's other projects that come up. Maybe perhaps the water line to Midwest and Edgerton. Maybe we might need to plug in something for that.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered that. So,
Because we did 850 on that, correct?
okay.
They're in the process right now of getting everything engineered for that, so.
And Commissioner North, who are they using, WLC's?
No,
or did they
no,
go with
no, they're going with WWC.
WLC?
Yeah.
So, Madam Clerk, just a question, as far as reserve projects, when these are put into, say, fiscal year '24, and if they're not expended, what happens with those funds? Do they,
It stays, the money stays. So this 1 cent reserve is separate from that, the 1 cent 17.
okay,
So these reserve projects will not be reflected on your 1 cent 17 worksheet. That's why I've prepared this. So that money just sits in the 1 cent reserve account.
and if the funding does not get spent on 1 cent 17 fiscal year '24, anything that's left from that goes to the reserve?
That is correct.
And that can be used on other projects?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we said 2.8 for the lodge?
2.85.
Did we get anything from the school district on that?
I think the answer is, we're gonna try, but nothing firm at this point.
That is the best I can give you right now.
Okay, so if they're not going to commit, then we're not going to commit to them.
Which
I mean,
think they'll-
play hardball. I mean,
It-
if they're not going to
It's
stay.
not all the members. There's been a change on the bill, and so there's been a different philosophy. You're seeing different
I'm-
things happen.
I'm just saying, if they're not going to.
What's the reason for them to do that? I guess I'm not connecting the dots there.
On what?
Of the school district giving us money for a project on the mountain.
Because they potentially use it as much or more than anybody else with the high school teams.
They're the number one, they're the biggest, sole user of that.
Hmm.
They use it all the time. Sole.
I think
Sole
that's.
user, they're the biggest sole user.
That's
I think
SOLE, not
that's something we need to
SOUL.
address at a later date.
Sole.
Did we have anything else on the 1 cent?
Also, add to the reserve would be the Herbst gravel pit at 1.25 and the Buffalo Creek gravel pit at 80,
At 80.
please. Do we want to talk about tribal funds, or that for a later date? Or did you kind of have a gist of what has been approved thus far?
We're getting that in 2 tranches, right? We received one, another one this coming fiscal year, an amount of 1 point something.
Mr. Chairman, could I just get a brief explanation of what tribal funds are and where they come from? Just due to the name.
That's what they're called.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, so I'll let someone else answer that question. I
It's
just,
just another chop of money that was handed out by the feds, the state.
It's unrestricted too,
It's
correct?
unrestricted.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a misnomer to call it tribal funds.
It's local government.
It's a local government and tribal funds, but because of the funding from the federal government, people start referring to it as tribal funds, but it's not restricted in any way or associated with tribal stuff in Natrona County.
It sure seems strange to call it that, but
Do you want to go over what's already been expended out of that?
nothing's been expended.
Or,
I'm looking for
Earmarked,
it, I'm looking
yeah.
for it real quick. But a total of 2.3 million was allocated, and we received the first installment of 1.18 this current fiscal, and we'll get the same amount in fiscal '24, is my understanding.
is this something all states get, or is it,
It's different allocations.
Yes, it is.
but it's federal money, so it must have a thick book along with it about how it can be used?
No.
No, it doesn't have restrictions on it.
And Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund is the official name.
Interesting.
Only caveat is we got to report on it until we use it up. Then once we use it up, we're good. So while we're sitting on it, we've got to.
How long do we have to spend it, so to speak? Is there a time limit on how long you keep it and utilize it or whatever?
It's in our fund, it just sits there, it's just reporting.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's no deadline for use.
Or on what you use it for, apparently.
Correct.
The strange federal fund.
So, so the amounts that we have it earmarked for already is the IT, backup room.
Continuity and security, and yes, and having information from Mr. Poplick yesterday, that $500,000 is low.
was low, but eventually the district will assist it.
And then we have an equipment shed out at Road and Bridge for $600,000, and then the rescue boat for the sheriff.
okay? Do we have anything else on any of that?
What does that leave for a total of what we're receiving? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So that's 1.2, so that would eat up this first allocation plus a little more.
Just making sure we're done with that section there.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim, did you have something else you wanted to add with the fair?
So just gave you guys another map, Tom. There's a blacked out area around 3, part of 1, part of 2, down to the southern part of 4, and the northern part of 1 in the front, and then the northern part in the backside of the industrial building. Those are the portions that have been completed at this point in time. So you've got the very southern part of 1, the middle part of 2, all of 4, and the backside of 5 that need to be completed.
I don't see 5 on this.
That little pink area.
It's along
It's a red one.
It's
There's
what?
a line running through, it's dark.
This right here.
Oh, I don't see the number 5 anywhere.
That, I just, goes on another one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anyway, so between the 2 funds allocated in 1 cent and then the 300, that little portion between 1 and 2, that was done partially with the assistance of DOT for motorcycle training and whatnot, so they're able to get that put in there as well. But between those 2 plus if we're able to fund the 300, that should completely, that'll take care of everything. Plus, like I said, you should be able to come in and budget please.
So that's 800 from 1 cent and then 300 additional requested.
Yes.
So are you suggesting that we go back and allot the 300 that they're requesting?
If we want the project to continue.
Look and see what we have. It's first funding.
We have the tribal funds.
And eventually, it sounds
$3 million.
like that's a- funds that
Oh, good.
quite spent. Potentially using those.
Commissioner Milne, is there a way we can maybe punt on this until a little bit and we actually see how much money we have?
So, yes.
Put a paperweight on it, on this last 300 for an hour or so?
Well, sure. Of course.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just so you know, the full request is included in any numbers that I will give you as far as bottom line total request. I do want to ask, as far as the wages, the adjustments that Danielle had come up with after her review, are you wanting me to reduce those 2 items, that amount?
What 2 items were those again?
So,
It was for a couple positions in
Oh,
the fairgrounds proposed wage increases.
right, so I believe, didn't she say that potential for the proposed increase for the general manager was correct?
Correct. The 2 discrepancies she has is the marketing and promotions. She feels that should be 7,000.
Right.
And then
New hire.
the second grounds maintenance, or the
6-month employee.
the 4-month employee
Okay.
should not receive anything at this time. That's only has 4 months of service.
we kind of had a discussion like this once before. And I like something Mr. Nicolason said. I'm going to loosely quote it. Some of these 4-month employees might become 20-year employees if we treated them right. So I think we ought to let them give the person a $1 an hour raise, myself. And I don't think any of their requests were over the limit of engaging in keeping people working here. Sometimes that isn't incorporated into these raises like it should be.
Mr. Chairman.
Peter?
I hear what you're saying. I agree with it. HR went to a lot of time and trouble to try to get us to a place of equity, fairness, and consistency. And, you know, it's just a tough place to be in on these staffing issues. So you want to give people as much as you can, but you've got to run a business here too, essentially.
We do. I do think, though, there is a element of recognizing what's happening in the state and the number of jobs opened, and you can take into account this issue with the nurses that have been discussed by everybody who hires nurses and what problems they're having, and if they stick to that particular formula, they're not going to get any nurses here. So sometimes the formula is good in some ways. In some ways, it prevents getting good people that we need. So I just always try to bear that in mind when I look at these things. And that these are all run by boards who did a lot of work themselves and have had contact with all their people and what they believe will work for them to keep people there for 40 years. And we don't have a lot of that, so and it's a paltry sum besides, so that's how I view it, my own personal self. Because we have the same problem in other areas, really, of losing people if we don't look at things just a little bit differently and put value on time here.
Mr. Chairman.
Peter?
Danielle told us in a follow-up email yesterday that she got off the phone with Tom. He agreed to the recommendations. Thank you for the explanations and justifications. He said it makes sense to him. He can decrease that request by $12,000.
Yeah, I saw that note.
It looks like Danielle's explanation made sense to the manager. Yeah, I appreciate, he's a super nice guy and gets along with everybody. I have heard other comments, however, from people about it.
So we have a recommendation from HR that's been accepted by,
Follow the recommendations.
that would follow those.
Thank you.
Does that answer all of our questions on the fair at this point in time, with the exception of on the asphalt? And then I had a note here, you wanted to go back to equipment? Or did we answer all those questions?
Well, I think we can, however, maybe we look at revenues, see where we're sitting, and see if we need to move some of those to 1 cent reserve if need be to help the bottom line.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, yesterday you said we would discuss today the issue of a raise for our maintenance supervisor.
We're discussing that later this afternoon in
Okay.
executive session.
Oh, all right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll let you guys take the lead on the revenue discussion. And you all have your updated through May? Do you want me to, you want me to make some copies?
Yeah, it'd be great if you could.
What is it? Is this what she's talking about?
No, we're supposed to be done, yeah.
I think it is, isn't it? Steve, is this what she's talking about?
This is expenses, these are revenues, these are actual expenses so far, so.
I don't know how you can set it, but
Oh, those things are rough.
they immediately come back. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is about it, they're horrible. When they made them back in the day, they weren't thinking of people's backs. Yeah, yeah, it's got sitting in the church. They just chew us.
starting at 1:30 and doing a full work session until, well, and a business meeting at 5:30, so. Well, I know you kicked it over to us, but I'm going to kick it to Peter because he apparently did his homework.
You're serious now?
We're all business now,
I
baby.
want to tell you about what somebody says about ties.
I don't care.
You'll laugh, you'll think it's funny.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have till about 11:45, and then I'll need to go attend virtually a Industrial Siting Council hearing. So, I would first say that I am not an expert on all of these line items. I would just basically be generally familiar with many of them, and I just spent a little time looking at trends over the last couple of years, and then compared it to the ask for, I'm sorry, not the ask, the estimated revenue number in generally the column on the right. I don't have a basis to agree or disagree with many of them. And in many cases, I left them alone. In some cases, I reduced them by a little bit and then added some where I thought, based upon maybe what we've seen, for example, on sales and use taxes, gaming commission, parimutuel, skill-based gaming. That would be 5171 on the first page. We see how revenue trends have gone up. In fiscal year 22, it was 1.1, then you see 1.6 was actual, then this current fiscal year is 1.5, and actual is 2. The Treasurer's Office or the WCCA or the other source of the information put in 1.7 for that. We think that with, I think a couple of the either ones on the drawing board or that have recently come before the county, that could be a little more. So in that case, I actually added $200,000. So my number instead of 1.74 would be 1.94. Now, that's just one example of kind of my methodology on this. And in some cases, it's a wild guess. But where I'm at on this is a total figure of $55,800,000 before taking out the items shown at the bottom of the second to last page and at the very top of the last page. So I think that I'll give you, I'm at basically a total net figure of $50 million for estimated revenues for 2024. I think that could increase by a couple $1 million if we get the investment right on the hospital funds. But I wanted to make what I felt was a conservative approach on this, and that's where my $50 million winds up at. And I can get into more specifics, and maybe as we go, I will. If you have questions, let me know. But I just kind of want to give my overview and where I thought we might end up on a conservative basis.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
I left mine at home, the dog ate it, whatever. Did the same thing last night, basically. Numbers are a little different, were a little different than Peter's, but I did the same thing as far as trying to trend it out. Seems like mine came really close to Peter's total. I don't know about the net, though. It seemed like it was a little bit more. I may have been a little less conservative as Peter on mine. So, but we're talking same neighborhood. Thank you, ma'am. That's my.
Let's just say family.
Yeah. I remember, right? I figured.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I don't know if the clerk wants to jump in at this point or how we want to proceed, if we want to go kind of by category, whatever folks think.
Oh, if you guys want to start the discussion, and then I can, once I have my figures together, I can chime in. But, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Nicolason, so I wanted to make sure, because I was only half listening, and I apologize, when you were doing your calculations, you did, to arrive at your net figure, you did take out all the numbers on the bottom page, the last page.
Correct.
Like 1 cent sales tax, road funds, all that.
Correct.
Okay.
So the number on your sheet, our sheets, what I would say the gross estimated revenue number for 2024 is $60,133,996.
Correct.
I had 55,800. And so then my net gets us right, after I take out those items, or it says less, including 1 cent, gets us down to the 50 million, and I just rounded that off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's the same thing that I did separately, and we're in the same ballpark. If I remember right, my net was sitting at 52.
So you had 60, you both had 60 as the total, and then you,
So if you take a look at the last pages here.
the last of this.
You see what the net is.
Mm-hmm. 60 less all these items. You
Right, so
kinda
this
arrive
60
at
is
this.
based off of WCCA, Tom, and other estimates, right? We're going off estimates.
Okay.
What,
My number.
so they're going off those estimates. What Peter and I did was trend them out
Right, to figure out
to figure out approximately where we're
if they're
thinking.
going up or down, and then you come up with your number.
And then, yeah, for here,
Yep, and then you
and then
subtract it
subtract
out.
all this stuff, and that gives you that number down there where they said 53.
Yep, okay.
I heard that too. So is there some reason we never have hired CPAs to actually look at this? Yeah, but
So
the,
WCCA,
the city has one, that's why I asked.
right, WCCA provides a fairly, I'd almost go say their detailed report, plus it's also, for me, it's a little liberal, more, not as conservative in their estimation sometimes. Sometimes, like the example that Peter used for this 1.7 rather than higher, because how that's trending, I put it higher as well for the gambling. So they'll be doing that for the state, for every county. Then also estimates from Tom and Nick, that's how all this is derived.
we can't really say what the figures are going to be because we haven't got them yet. We're forecasting.
Yeah, and Nick consults with, Tom's office, and I think Nick is generally doing a lot of this, some of the legwork. They're consulting with the different departments that have specific information on this. But this revenue estimating manual, WCCA's been doing this for a long, long time. They have the best handle on, I think, the funding from the state and the federal government, and I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. Not that you were suggesting we did, but I think we have some comfort level that that's a pretty good place to start.
I just think back to the first budget I was in with the city, when I first got appointed and they were approving the budget that exceeded the income by $4 million
So is this what we already,
based upon
Is
their
that
documentation.
reimbursable
And then it was
No,
determined that the documentation
yeah,
was inaccurate.
yeah, so that's potential, like if we did that, and at 5% or 4.85, then that's what it could be.
so would your numbers that you had, you were adding this back in, or is that part of the?
I didn't have that, so you see what I did? I've got a 2 to 5.4. 5.4 is this number,
Mhm.
and I stayed at 2 until we invest that, so mine could come up $2 million.
See, and that may be where me and you changed.
Right.
I included it.
See, and I thought, well, until we actually do it, I didn't have a level of comfort to say it's gonna be anything more than the half of 1% interest.
Right. Well, I
So it should come
so the latter, I wasn't sure about because I don't know if we're doing that or what we're doing there.
Mhm.
But I figured we were going to, at minimum, invest the money somewhere, this money somewhere as far as with the pool number, so that I included that. That's where we're changing hats a little bit, Peter.
Does the loss of 3.7 million or whatever it is, has it been effect on this?
Included money from that investment.
No, because this is where they're adding it back in, this is potential investment of that money would bring this. And if you look at that right there, that's almost making up the loss in the first year.
So the more we put in,
If it doesn't,
the farther out our returns will be, right? The smaller
Go the other way.
they'll be per 6 months,
Mhm.
but they'll be out there. If we put it into a pool, the quicker, the faster it'll gain, short term, but there's no guarantee for long term.
Mhm.
That's how I looked at it.
And that's why I think we do a combination.
Exactly. So,
I had a question for the sheriff. May I?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
U.S. Marshal billings, Mr. Sheriff, U.S. Marshal billings. It seems like the budgeting is a little higher consistently than actuals. And I could show you, and I didn't know, I mean, so we're at 378, or it was 378, but then actual is 87, 257, and actual 35, 171. So I just, based upon the trend, thought maybe that was not going to be consistent with what has been coming in. Is there, what goes on with the marshals?
This is revenues.
Right.
Yes.
And if you're not sure, because I think Nick talked to somebody.
I do. Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Nick Gleason, where we're sitting at with the U.S. Marshal holds right now is the number in the last few years, the average inmate population under that contract has been lower. Some of that is a result of COVID and the change you saw in federal custody of people during COVID. And some of it is a result of different counties offering a more competitive price. But the reality is that we're currently in the very lengthy process to renegotiate the cost of housing federal inmates in our detention center. So you're aware that every year the accounting firm comes in and does a process of figuring out what our average daily cost is to house inmates. That is passed on to the municipalities that house inmates in our facility. That cost doesn't transfer directly over to housing those federal inmates because of the contract cost, and the process to go through that is very lengthy. So we're currently in the process of that now. And there has been discussions with the Marshal's office on housing more of their prisoners locally, so they have less transportation costs. But as far as forecasting that, it's hard to pin that number down. And certainly hard to give you a realistic forecast of what that's going to look like this next year.
Well, I sure appreciate that, Mr. Sheriff. And I think in part, when we're looking at trends, I didn't have any other questions for you, but just in general, as we're looking at trends, and those trends include COVID years, which upsets the whole nature of trending anyhow, maybe we either look at pre-COVID years and numbers from those years too, or just assume that that's part of the challenge in all of this, and for our departments and your department as well.
I think that's fair. It certainly is one of the challenges as we look at forecasting that. When you talk about the federal government and what they're doing with managing their inmates, there's considerable politics involved in their philosophy on what they do with inmates and where they move them around. And then again, we're looking at trying to increase the cost that we charge the federal government to house inmates. So right now, they're paying about $80 a day per inmate, and we'd like to move that up more comparable to what municipalities are being charged. It's more representative of what the actual costs are.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick. Sheriff, I think I know the answer, but I don't remember exactly, so maybe just when talking about JDC and Cornerstone, when another county sends us a kid and they're housed up there, does that other county pay Cornerstone, or do they pay us and then we pay Cornerstone?
I'd have to get you a real good answer on that. So billing's kind of complex. It depends on what the criminal charges are for that juvenile, or if they're on a DFS hold. But typically that money comes back into the general fund, and then we give a set rate to Cornerstone.
Okay. Thank you. That was it.
Mr. Chairman, one thing that we're going to have to be very aware of moving forward is that God forbid, absent another pandemic, the federal slush fund to state, local, county governments is going to change dramatically, and I think you can see that in some of the other revenues. Those are the 6900 series where we've received, we budgeted, we estimated 7.8 in '22. We got 8.7. Then the next year estimated only 165,000, but we got 7.6 million. And now this year, we're only looking at receiving 167,000. So, pretty dramatic. Not all those are COVID, actually, but just, it's kind of the flux that we see. Health premiums received. Madam Clerk, do you know about that one? 6950, what is health insurance premiums received?
That's for our health insurance received from employees, employee portion.
And we budget zero for that because, since not general fund revenue.
It's that benefit trust, which is it's a restricted account separate from the general fund.
Madam Clerk, if these are in, if there's a parentheses around, like park reservation system, 4,264, is that showing it's a negative or?
Yes.
That's not a good revenue trend.
How do we end up in a negative on something like that?
But I think that was that part of the cluster that happened.
Well, I'm looking under road and bridge, and then if you look at line item 6586,
I thought they had to give a bunch of money back around Easter or something.
it's Parks Reservation System fees. The actuals on it show negative 4,264.33. And we're projecting it to be a negative again next year.
No idea.
Do we use a third-party service for that?
Which one are you looking at? Right here. Go down.
And
For the lake, it was suspended for the mountain
Yeah.
and something else, and part of the lake.
and maybe there's a minimum fee that the revenues just don't cover.
Yeah. Part of the contract with the third party maybe.
Just wonder where that money goes.
Ought to. I'll ask.
Why did the county direct distribution, why is it going to up so high from now?
Where is that?
5394, county direct distribution from the legislature, and it's probably in here.
53.
You see it goes from 2 million in the last 2 years to 4.5.
What's your estimate of how much money we have to do? Here, that's the balance.
On page 17. What?
Oh, okay.
How much money do you think we have here with this, so we have this balance?
50 to 52 million.
I don't know how much it's probably going to ask for.
Not yet, we will.
We gotta put the two together here shortly.
So we won't be able to buy that Volkswagen bus.
let's just say that was the governor's.
His estimation.
Remember they added some money at the end of the session.
Oh, okay.
That's nice. That, it doubled.
Cool. Hopefully we'll have an answer soon. Anything else? Where are we at? Because I got other things I can do. I'm just saying, if you're sitting there playing on your phones.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you, the total request is 58,674,095.
58.
Now, with that, you will take out 2,884,820 for 1 cent.
How much?
2,884,820. You will take out 1,444,229 for lakes. And you will take out 3,537,866 for road funds. So according to my math, we're sitting at 50,807,180.
To approve what? That way?
That is the request.
Could you read that first number, the total request again?
58,674,095.
And the first deduction was for what?
1 cent.
1 cent? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the net debt is what?
50,807,180.
Minimum one more step.
It seems like the real handout here is the pool.
It's probably the trailer.
Right, the trailer.
Probably the trailer. I think you want to flat that.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, if we were to look at adjusting some more requests, we could always go back to the 39 account, because that total right now is 1.1 million. We could go look at the 39 account and maybe shift some of those requests to the 1 cent reserve as an option. However, we have not addressed employees.
Well, that's true, we haven't. Or am I to assume we're going to give the fairgrounds the extra 300,000? Okay, that's a yes, okay. So then, Steve tells me we're going to discuss some of this in the executive session with it just one salary, or is there or more involved?
One right now. Just the one.
So are we good then?
So, Mr. Chairman, Madam Clerk, what is the next step for talking about salary payroll and that impact?
Mr. Chairman, the numbers that Danielle and I arrived at, 4% would, I believe it was somewhere around 967,000, including burden. So that would be a 2% step increase and a 2% COLA.
Which that isn't market, is it?
I think that's the current trend and what is happening across the board, state, market.
And Mr. Chairman, we've already agreed to that, right? That's just the impact of it, I thought.
I wasn't under the understanding that we agreed to it.
Yes. Well, what'd you say, the
900.
I believe it's 967. 967,000, I believe.
For some reason, I thought the minimum was 3%, but where did I get that, Ms. Good?
Mr. Laird, I'm not sure.
it's over. This is cool.
Put you at about 51, 74. Just under 52.
Can we have the executive session earlier so we can complete this?
Do it later. We're not finalizing it today by any means.
Oh, that's
so.
right, that's right. Semi-finalizing it, I guess.
Any other surprises?
Mr. Chairman,
Here comes-
also after speaking with, or rereading Danielle's email, she suggests a 2% COLA and a 2% wage and step increase at the person's anniversary date month. Now, with that being said, on their anniversary date month, my calculations were a full fiscal, so that would reduce the impact. How much? I'm not exactly sure, but it would reduce it, I believe, quite, maybe considerably.
Did the number you gave us, the 58, the total 58 million, did that or did it not include the 300,000 for the asphalt?
Yes,
Did,
It did?
yeah.
yes.
Okay, sorry, don't do that. Okay.
Just tell them to get it done, just tell them to get it done this year.
So, okay, the cap.
It's not gonna be that much, I know. Are you talking about for the lodge?
No, I'm talking about for the health department.
Oh,
The health department, the cap.
We have some of the category goes there.
Do we want to look at that or just keep running? Do we want to make payments on it one way or the other, basically?
well, my understanding was continuing to rent that, it would still, if you ever decided to buy it, you'd still get the,
Yeah, it's rent to buy, basically.
so I think it's good and continue to rent that. With that said, though, how much other equipment do we have that's been torn up that needs to be
He's
replaced?
got- Shaking your head at, oh, her.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm probably talking out of turn, but when you work at finalizing this, I'd like a little direction on what this 2%, as far as employee raises, the 2% at the anniversary date step increase, because that's outside of what we have established for step and grade. And with the complexity of our pay structure, that's gonna, I'll need some clarification on how you want.
Yeah, yours is a little bit different.
Quite a bit different.
Yeah.
But, Mr. Chairman, Sheriff, you have your step and grade increases other than your admin staff that you want to implement. Those are already built into your numbers, correct?
We have a step and grade built into that budget number.
Right, okay, so, okay,
So then the 2% would not apply to those, to my staff, the 2% step and grade.
Because yours is higher than that, isn't it?
Just inside.
correct. And then the COLA, however the COLA would.
COLA would. Okay.
So that number, you know, if we did some hard math, that could be reduced as well. But because of the complexity of his budget, or his,
Conservatively wise, if we don't do part of that. Not saying we shouldn't, but just, we're above what we're potentially expecting. The hard math would reduce it, is what you're saying?
I believe so.
Better. No.
Yeah, make it better.
What would it take to do the hard math on it, just so we have an idea?
My accountant could get that to you pretty quick. I just need to be clear on what we're talking about. So the 2% cost of living is applied across the board.
Yep.
And then typically when we talk about cost of living, that moves that pay grade, that percentage. Because so if we have an established pay grade, which is what Danielle came up with the midline.
So the COLA will push everything up.
The COLA pushes the entire pay grade up.
Yes.
And then people continue to move through the steps as,
Grade.
yes, right. So that's where the confusion would be, is if, so the 2% that you're talking about now, the 2% that is a step on the anniversary date, that wouldn't apply to the sheriff's office because we already have a step and grade structure.
Right.
Okay, so the sheriff's office would just be looking at 2% cost of living.
That would move your scales up, and that would be it.
Okay, I can get that number to you pretty quick.
Does that make sense, Sheriff?
It does now, yes.
Do you, and you agree with that thought process?
That was a cross-examination question.
And I ask that because in your 24 budget request, you have put all of your staff into a step and grade, including admin who had previously had not been.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do support that, and I wasn't part of the discussion on what the other offices were doing, what they decided to do, so that was new, but I just wanted to make sure that I have the intent of the commission correct when I move forward with that I'm looking at 2%, not 4%.
And when we originally, my market continuum, as I'm calling it, we originally started out with the sheriff, and he was a great help to get us, what he did for his steps and whatnot. But as we worked through it, we came to the conclusion that mine, the clerk of district court, and the treasurer's office, we can't just have a step and grade because we have clerks 1, 2, and 3. So if I have a clerk 1 who's been there for 5 years and she moves to a clerk 2, and I start her at step 1, obviously she would be going back in pay. So that is the main reason why we aren't following his exact step and grade. So we kind of, after all the hard work he helped us with, and we came to the determination after talking to Danielle, that's really not going to work, then we kind of just went off the market adjustment and the projected increase per year, which was 2% per Danielle's direction.
I just don't understand how we came up with 2%. 'Cause
That's what the
I think
trend
it's a
is right
standard.
now.
I think it's a standard, an industry
Is it?
standard, is what I'm understanding.
I thought it was
That may not be.
3 or 4, actually.
That may not be what, our neighbors are doing or other municipalities or counties are doing, but I think on the wage study, that's just a standard. And as you probably have heard, other entities are doing more, or they're, it's all over the board, but I think she just tries to take her market data and work from there.
So I think the only other question that I have goes back to Road and Bridge, just because we're talking about whether we're leaving something out or not. I realize that when we first asked for information to start being put together for this, we were back in April, I believe, and I know our most substantial snowstorm seemed to come after that, and I know that we had a lot of equipment that got torn up, and we asked for assistance to come over and help us. So I guess I'm more curious at this point as to whether everything's been asked for by Road and Bridge post last snowstorm. I mean, are we prepared for next winter? Do we have equipment that's still broken and needs to be repaired or replaced?
That was part of his narrative. He was talking about the plows, the V plows and whatnot.
getting those replaced and how long it's gonna take to have that stuff made, so. I mean, it's not like you can't not have it,
Sure.
but it would be. Can you touch on that with him when you talk to him?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we're prepared going into, so if we need to make some adjustments, I'd rather make them now and make sure that we're prepared in case it happens again, not that it will.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. And then one item to note also, in the sheriff's budget, he asked for the addition, that deputy, and then an increase, a wage increase in addition to, that is not in the number I gave you. And that's about $113,000 total, so not that big of a amount, but I just wanted to make sure you know that I'm going to be adding that in. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think until we can get some more tight numbers on salaries, I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think we know the ballpark of where we need to be or where we are, so we could schedule another half a day or whatnot. I feel comfortable doing that if everyone is in agreement.
What works best?
I would like the opportunity to get the numbers pretty tight as far as salaries. Okay, for him, since he has Wonder Woman over there today or tomorrow. But for me and Danielle, because there's a lot of variables and I want to make sure we're understanding the intent, because I think sometimes that gets lost in translation also. It's easy to say 2% across the board and 2% this and 2% that, but there's different variables. I want to make sure we hit those as close as possible, because I feel with the market study that didn't happen. So we're always down to the end gate here, and we're trying to throw stuff together. So with all of that, I would entertain maybe the 12th of July.
Okay, does that give you enough time? Both ways? Like enough time between now and then to get it done, and then enough time prior to
Can't do it
final?
this month?
No. I have a scheduling conflict. I'll be out of town the week of July 3rd. And next week, I have to get the publication together, and I have other statutory obligations that I have to meet.
Tracy, do you think if we do it on that day, I might be out of town myself.
Okay.
But we can do a Zoom, right? Where I come in.
Because we have until the 17th of July to approve the budget. Or that's the approval date, is when we will be approving it. But if you feel that's pushing it too close, perhaps we could have something together next week.
I'd like to see it done, because I've got plans myself.
I don't want you to miss anything.
Because that's a lot of, I would have to add it to these requests. That's a lot of figuring, a lot of calculations, a lot of math.
Is there a specific reason for the 12th, or could we just do it that Monday on the 10th?
There wasn't, I was just
Okay.
throwing a number out, or a date out.
I'm getting ready for a vacation, so I gotta try to get a space in there somewhere. I've missed a birthday and an anniversary.
You didn't miss the anniversary. You made it.
Well, barely.
Okay, well, you made it.
It doesn't matter for me.
I say July 10th. That gives you plenty of time, but it doesn't push us up against the wall on approval either, so.
Unless you can do it next week without causing you ulcers.
And you're posting right? It's the posting to the notification.
The publication is the proposed,
Right.
So that has to be done, posted 7 days prior to the approval. So I would have to have that into the paper by the 6th to publish on the 9th. But since it's a proposed, there's wiggle room, so that's not my concern. Getting the numbers and adding them to the spreadsheet, including the burden, I can take a number and plus 2%, and that's not the problem, but I want to be as accurate as possible since we are running kind of tight.
Let's do July 10th.
With that, we're looking at a 2% COLA and a 2% step
So
per
that's,
Danielle's recommendation.
that's something we can call in on if we have to? On the 10th?
Just take your book with you.
Somebody told me that Henry went on a cruise and called in one time. I like that idea.
Are we adjourned till 1:30?
Think so. And do you have something else?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
We'll be adjourned till